Good morning, everybody. This is a great session that you would really want to look forward to, and I wish that you take a lot of pointers from it. Just to give you a background, NASSCOM released a recent study, which is in as a research partner, Zinnov was also part of it, titled "The India Web3 Startup Landscape and Emerging Technology Leadership Frontier." And this is one of the first kind of study that aimed at promoting a broader understanding of the diverse possibilities with Web3 and the landscape of Web3 startups in the country. Uh, Transiting from Web2 to 3.0 has been a decisive journey where a lot of people are inquisitive about what the journey is all about and how it is going to transform our future. However, this report brings into light a lot of things in clarity, and I think we have a lot of amazing experts on board who are coming across to share their thought-provoking discussion on Web3 opportunities for India. Let me just quickly introduce myself and the panel members. My name is Ravi Kikan. I'm Director Marketing, Online Sales and Growth at Zing HR, which is an HR tech company. The better part is I'm one part of the advisory board member at the NASSCOM Insights. So it is a real pleasure to come on board here and moderate the session. On the panel members that we have today on our event is Ms. Samrat is a technology consultant with a decade of rich experience working with firms like GD, KPMG, Deloitte, and presently Accenture Strategy. He advises businesses on innovative business models driven by technology and deep design thinking. He's a strong believer in open innovation and is presently contributing to blockchain technology as a member of NASSCOM's blockchain SIG. He's adept at spotting technology trends and has successfully predicted many technology applications to new business models. Welcome, Samrat.
Thank you so much, Ravi, for having me.
On the next is an amazing namesake gentleman who's also a doctor, Dr. Ravi Chamria, who's the co-founder and CEO of Zeeve. Dr. Ravi is a co-founder, CEO of Zeeve Incorporation, which is an enterprise blockchain company. He's a total experience of about 18 years in IT consulting, spanning across fintech, insurtech, supply chain, and e-commerce. He's an executive MBA from IIM Lucknow and a well-profiled person in emerging technologies in blockchain, IoT, and ML as well. Dr. Ravi, it's great to have you on board here.
Yeah, thanks, Ravi, and welcome everyone.
Great. So we have one of the engagement leads from Zinnov, Vikalp Sharma. He's part of the open innovation team delivering projects that accelerate go-to-market strategies for corporates and startups, which is very close to what I have been working with. So it is going to be very interesting to hear his comments. He engages with corporates and enterprises in identifying opportunities in India, tech startup system for co-creation, go-to-market, acquiring and investments as well, which is a diverse portfolio in itself. Vikalp, happy to have you on board.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you for having me. Looking forward.
Great. Then we have the awesome contributor and one of the senior analysts from NASSCOM Insights, Rashi Sharma. She's an experienced research professional with a demonstrated history of working in the information technology and service industry, skilled in customer relationship management, which is CRM, market research, primary research reports, and competitive intelligence projects. Rashi, welcome on board. This is your platform.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ravi. Look forward to the session.
Excellent. So while we've discussed the background, there are a couple of things that are most important to understand. But before we jump into it, I would invite Vikalp Sharma from Zinnov to give key insights about the report. How was this report consumed, and what is the kind of market landscape, investors, and talent that this report will cover? After that, I would request Rashi to take over to understand the key ticks in the report in terms of policy, academia, and industrial recommendations. So over to you, Vikalp, for your key insights, please.
Thank you, Ravi. Once again, welcome everyone for this walkthrough and discussion. So this particular report was meant to understand the Web3 startup landscape better in India, right? So far, every year we come up with this startup report to understand the startup ecosystem better. But Web3 being a concept which is at a nascency, we wanted to understand it in a better perspective, and especially from an Indian lens, right? And therefore, we earlier this year we spent about 3 to 4 months to understand the concept. We spoke to a couple of startups in the area, and that's how we came up with this report. Uh, so to give you a perspective in terms of how we're looking, what kind of uh, volume we have in terms of the number of startups in Web3 in India, right? So there are about 450 Web3 startups in India currently. And the last 2 years have been really great in terms of how the ecosystem has grown. So if you look at just 2021 and 2022, there were about 160 plus startups that were founded in this duration. And and also you look at the cumulative growth rate in terms of understanding how this ecosystem has grown. So it has been about 57% of CAGR in the last 7 years, right? And most importantly, right, we need to understand that they're close to 50% of these startups are solving for business B2Bs, using B2B business model, right? That means they're solving a lot for enterprises, and therefore a variety of use cases have come up in Web3 space. Uh, we are currently looking at about 4 Web3 unicorns in terms of ecosystem presence. One of the most important part of this study was to understand how much skill set we have, right? We found out that there were about 75,000 installed Web3 talent that is there in terms of Web3 capabilities, right? Also, in terms of investments, there are about 70 plus active investors who have invested, whether they are homegrown funds or their HQs are outside India, right? And we saw that the total cumulative investments in this space have been around on the tune of $1.3 billion as on Q1 2022. Uh, More importantly, it was to look at how there's a popular or a very popular opinion about cryptocurrency in India, that most of the Web3 solutions are around cryptocurrency trading. And interestingly, that's not the case, right? If you look at the overall areas where Web3 startups are attacked, there are decentralized finance, there are entertainment or infrastructure, or even decentralized communities. We're talking about solutions such as asset management in decentralized finance, about microfinance, derivatives, where applications involve usage of smart contracts as well as digital currencies for financial transactions. And we also looked at that the top use cases have been either NFTs or metaverse, right? Now, it is also important to understand how technologies are playing role in terms of evolving these solutions, right? So we looked at this set of companies, and we found that about there's a convergence of technologies in building these solutions. So there are about 37% of AI/ML startups that are using blockchain-based solutions. So as AI become core to smart contracts or even mining of blockchains, on blockchains, blockchain-based solutions become very important. About 100 plus such startups are using AI/ML, but they're also deploying blockchain-based solutions. Same is the case with AR/VR. We see that there's emerging use case, which is gaming tech, right? And we see that there are about 50 plus startups where blockchain solutions are AR/VR enabled. And talk about big data analytics and IoT, we have a similar case, right? So there's a convergence of technology, and the technology has role to play, especially the emerging technologies. Lastly, it's about talent presence, right? In India, we are currently the third largest Web3 talent pool, only after US and China, which is a big advantage in terms of how we look at the Web3 ecosystem, and hence it becomes an opportunity in itself, right? A recent LinkedIn OKX study reveals that the blockchain, the number of blockchain skills have grown immensely. And we're talking about percentage of 76% year on year. And this is as of 2022. Another important part is that the blockchain talent pool is growing, as high as 120%, more than 120%, which is higher than the countries such as Singapore or even China. So in nutshell, in summary, the ecosystem is growing. We have a strong evidence. It has attracted investments. And thirdly, it is relying heavily on talent, right? Now, having said that, we also are at a stage where we need to make it even better, right? And therefore, as a team, we looked at some of the recommendations, how we can go about making it even better ecosystem. So I'll request Rashi to share these recommendations. Over to you, Rashi.
Sure. So yeah, thank you so much, Vikalp, for summarizing the key insights from the report. So while India has the promising economic and demographic elements, talent pool, and investment prospects to become high growth Web3 market to lead this race and to keep up the growth momentum, there are certain aspects, mainly in regulations, academia, industry, and investors end, which should be focused on to create a higher impact. Some of the recommendations which we have included in the report to foster India's Web3 ecosystem are from the startups point of view to focus on the IP creation and engage with policymakers in constructive dialogue on how to modify the existing laws and policies to promote the new technologies. From the investors aspect, the recommendations points for diversifying their Web3 portfolio to include social use cases and seek energy efficient business models, and to promote the development of organically evolving blockchain-based communities. From a government aspect, enabling the collaboration with the industry leaders and veterans to understand the need for appropriate regulatory capacity and global coordination for high risk use cases, such as those involving banking, payments, and funding would be extremely beneficial. Also, expanding the sandboxing to test cross-functional use cases to identify the real risks and extents of regulations would also be extremely great to focus on from the government aspect. From the also from the academia side, building the dedicated Web3 curriculum for market-ready talent, short-term certifications that might help in bridging the upskilling technology gaps, and the proactive collaboration with the government to launch blockchain modules as a part of school curriculum will also really help in boosting the talent pool and enriching them in the education coming forward for this particular technology. Since Web3 is a blockchain-based web that leverages blockchain to build unique ownership incentives and community-led models for information experience. In fact, according to the report, 70% plus startups, Web3 startups in India are focusing on decentralized finance and token-based solutions for the world, which is beyond cryptocurrency trading. Therefore, it is very important to create awareness about Web3 since it transcends cryptocurrency usage, and it is definitely more than that and has the immense benefits which it brings in across various sectors such as healthcare, BFSI, and entertainment.
Great, Rashi. Thanks for the update. I think this report looks lucrative enough, and I remember my days early back in 2017-18 when I was working with one of the cryptocurrency companies, was Singapore-based one, and I had to educate people about what blockchain is about. You know, for people it was something which was a new technology, but for understanding it, you have to go back, understanding that it's something which is what is the fundamental of a new product or an emerging tech. So I think the next question that I directly will come to Ravi and Samrat would be, these are hotbed numbers, and these are, these kind of, technologies need a little simplified understanding for a common man. So when we're positioning ourselves and sharing these information with public at large, and there'll be founders and CTOs and aspiring technology guys and people who are interested in understanding technology at a base level, right? So my question
Right.
is right now, what is Web3 all about? Web2 we all know, right? So I'll go to Ravi and then probably I'll quickly go to Samrat. What is Web3 all about, and how do you see a difference in a very native form between Web2 and Web3 in the terms of transition, so that an early person and another adopter might understand it? Of course, you can use your understanding and your experience and understanding in a deeper version as well. But let's start it from a very basic level. What is Web3 all about, and how is it different from Web3, Web2? Ravi, all to you, and then probably I'll go to Samrat.
Yeah, so Web3 is a new version for internet. So as we see, the whole concept of internet was a semantic web. But what has happened in last 20 years is that, the internet overall has become more and more centralized, and it is not inclusive anymore. There are still a lot of people who are outside the ecosystem, whether it be finance or whether it be internet as a whole. So, and there are a lot of challenges in terms of trust and doing business with each other over the internet. So yes, with Web 1 and Web 2, we have come a long way with social mobility. There are a lot of better interactions. We have e-commerce, etc. But still, issues related to privacy, data control, and having centralized intermediaries, outdated incentive models, etc. So these are some of the challenges of Web 1 and Web 2. And that's where Web3 comes in. So Web3 is a decentralized web, in just a simple word, but what it means. So, so one is, Web3 is decentralized means that the ownership of data and ownership of asset is no more centralized. That resides largely with users, and user can not just own the data, but they can also, share the data on their own, and they can revoke the access anytime. Plus, this also helps in improving the whole creator economy, data monetization models, etc. Where I as a user can own the data, can decide when to share and with whom to share and for how long to share, and then at the same time would be able to monetize it in a much fairer and justified ways. So that's the decentralized piece of it. Second, Web3 is permissionless. So that means anyone can join the Web3 ecosystem, whether it be a protocol, whether it be a decentralized application. And that's a huge for financial inclusion. So if you compare that today, there are still billions of people who are outside the financial ecosystem in the traditional finance. But if you see DeFi, you simply need a wallet and a cryptographic identity. You can connect with any of the decentralized application and start availing the financial products there. So Web3 is permissionless and it's more equitable and inclusive. So it adds the whole financial inclusion dimension to it. And third, Web3 has native payments. So the crypto tokens or the tokens which resides at the heart of it. Of course, it's a much better, more efficient as far as the traditional banking and financial infrastructure is concerned. And that we have seen the whole direction of CBDCs, which are centrally bank issued digital currencies. The whole idea is to use blockchain for the efficiency of asset management, because the current backend infrastructure in the finance is not very efficient. It requires huge number of intermediaries to manage it. So that's where, again, the native payment system or the crypto payment system within the Web3 is very essential. And lastly, I would like to add that Web3 is trustless. So when trustless, that means, right now, the traditional business models are reliant on a trusted third parties. And instead of that, Web3 is bringing a whole trustless economy where newer incentive economic models are there to incentivize the stakeholders. And through the incentive alignment, we are trying to, you can say, creating new business models or making the existing business models better and more efficient. So that is what I would say largely what Web3 is. And it's a slow evolution from Web2 to Web3. It's not that it's starkly different from it, and that's why it's slowly evolving from Web2 to Web3 as we move forward. I think Samrat, over to you to add more pieces to it.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi, and really interesting perspectives. I barely find points where I can fill in, but But yeah, Ravi, going back to your point about trying to explain things in 2018, and to people who are new to blockchain, I'm glad we are doing this session in November of 2022, where most of the world is losing trust on the whole crypto space. But you know what, we're talking about Web3 here, and I think the critical point for everybody to understand is how vast this whole Web3 is, and how far beyond this goes, beyond cryptos or one crypto, or people who are leveraging and repackaging things. So yeah, I mean, just to re-emphasize on some of the points which Dr. Ravi already made, on the pervasiveness of Web3. I think I totally believe in the future, because if you see today, most of the large Web2 companies, they have been replicated. They've got a version of Web3. They've got a Web3 version of themselves already ready. Users are getting onboarded as we talk. So I think that's one of the most powerful things which I see. The other powerful thing which I see is, this report also highlights uh, the various startups which have come up out of India, and they are able to build for the world. Imagine that 5 years back, how difficult would it would be to build for the world sitting out of, let's say, a small B town, tier two city in India. But today it's possible, and people are doing it. So that's something very, very powerful for me. And to me, that is more, that is the inclusivity which is bringing it. It is bringing in security by design. So I think that's also one of my key areas of interest, cybersecurity. Because if you design a system which is bringing in privacy and security by design, then you, first of all, you give a lot of trust to people to start using it, right? And the other part is you also save a lot of costs, to do business. So it's like killing multiple birds with one stone, I would say. So all these factors, in the erstwhile scenario, you had to always be in a David versus Goliath game. There's an Infosys which is doing a software, and there's a startup, for example, setting out of WeWork in Bangalore. While they may be 20 kilometers apart from each other, but in the technology landscape, they would be light years apart, right? But in the Web3 space, they could be competing with an Infosys. In fact, beating Infosys in some spaces, because the innovation in Web3 space is all open source, mostly open source, I would say. And that, according to me, is a very powerful thing. That's why it's really taken off.
I have a question here, and it goes to Ravi and Samrat, both of you.
Sure.
Technically, if you look at the economy of blockchain, it is a utopian economy. It's a completely decentralized model. There's nothing like a private decentralized, a centralized model. Blockchain, technically, when it started off, it started as a public decentralized utopian. It's a utopian model, right? There cannot be a utopian model like blockchain ever if it has to be made. Now, when you talk about open source, it also becomes a utopian model, right? You talk about a completely utopian surface, like for example, Tesla has a utopian model in saying, "Take my code, build a model." Right? Blockchain was built to make sure it is a utopian model that everybody can synthesize their efforts on it. Now, my question to you, Samrat, and probably Ravi, both of you can jump in. Maybe
Sure.
Ravi, you can start, and probably Samrat, you can take it later. Is we are transiting from Web 2.0 to 3 right now, and we're on stage which is a mid stage, which is a 2.5, right? Now in this 2.5 stage, and what do you is our understanding in the time limits from it to jumping from 2.5 to 3, right? Are we fundamentally clear in terms of our mindset? Is the network clear on this mindset? Is the recipient and the giver, the creators, as we talk about the creating economy, are we clear how long it is going to take, or how fast will it take on in terms of adoption? Do you have some comments on it, Ravi? Maybe start with you.
Yep. Yeah. So, see, the whole concept of Web3 is a philosophy. And second, so now every concept, once it has been, you can say, accepted, requires an ecosystem to be built. So right now we are at a stage where different ecosystem components are being built. So that is one. Second, decentralization is like replacing or making dramatic changes to the existing business models. And that is something that can happen over a period of time. So to take an example, let's say you take any of the DeFi that Uniswap or a DEX or Aave-like lending protocol. Now, what has happened is that still you require an organization who is going to create set of smart contracts, even if the code is open, even if the smart contracts are completely decentralized. But still, there is someone who is having a larger control over when to run these contracts and when to stop these contracts, right? So still there is some centralized control that will remain, but that is how things operate. And then they came up with the concept of governance. So they created a decentralized governance, a DAO, which is going to take over all the decision making, whether it be strategic decisions or operational day-to-day decisions. That again, I would say is a transition that happens over a period of time. So what I see is 2.5 is more of a semi decentralized kind of system where we are moving from centralized to decentralized. I would say the models are becoming better. The data ownership or control is becoming better. It's going to the users. But at the same time, it's not very user friendly because we are still in a transition phase where people are learning how to use non-custodial wallets, for example, to handle their own private keys. So user experience is still lacking, right? Education is still lacking. Know-how is still lacking. So I think we are going to remain in 2.5 for a considerable period of time. I won't be able to put in numbers as far as years, but it's going to be considerable period of time because we are living in a scenario where not everyone is even Web2 compatible today, right? There is still a large chunk of people who don't know how to even handle digital data. So they are not even Web1 at this point of time. So of course it's going to take time as people get more comfortable using MetaMask and connecting with DeFi and start doing transactions. So it's going to take time. But yes, this is an exciting time in the sense that we are getting a lot of established models. We are seeing how Web3 is going to play a role, whether it's just a promise or it's something which delivers on its promise. So now, at least in 2022, we can say that yes, Web3 has delivered on its promise. The blockchain tech and other associated technologies, which are going to play a huge role in Web3, whether it be immersive technologies for metaverse or other pieces, they have become quite established in terms of validation.
Samrat, over to you.
Sure. No, Dr. Ravi, fantastic points again. I would say, so let's take a step backwards because you asked about the utopia. Why do we see it as utopia, and what really does it mean for adoption, right? So one is, yes, I think the permissionless blockchains, the way they were designed, were supposed to be, everybody can participate, start using things. But turns out that that's not the case, and over a period of time, the hyper decentralized blockchains actually became more and more difficult to start participating in, and then they started making pools and whatnot. So I think that there is a whole science behind decentralization and centralization. There's a lot of research work also going on as we talk. Both Ethereum Foundation and Ethereum Enterprise Alliance are both investing in substantial efforts on the research as well. Coming up with models and trying to evaluate the various chains and cryptos which exist today. The other side is, to your question about 2.5, I think why it came into being and why it will stay and or not stay. So my perspective is, it's extremely important to realize that everybody will never be coming on board a Web3 wallet knowingly. You still need a user experience layer for them to get onboarded, to start transacting. They may not know what's under the hood. Even today, maybe they may be using applications, or in future, let's say 2023 beginning, they will be using applications which they will not know about, but is working on some Web3 technology here and there. So I think that user experience layer I see as the lowest hanging fruit for 2.5, to exist, which is like a bridge. The second is I see, so there are two or three angles to it. The second side why I see 2.5 has to exist is the technology tab, because there are about $10 billion, almost $1 trillion worth of digital transformation projects which happen every year. If you look at the global digital transformation numbers. Now, out of that $1 trillion, most of it, may not realize its value, but still we're talking about global enterprises who put in millions and billions of dollars into transitioning to a new technology or a new software, which is, which has its own sales cycle of, let's say, half a year or 2 years. So they have made those investments over a period of time, or there are mergers and acquisitions which are happening, because of which inorganic technology growth is happening in large companies. So these guys will not rip off their systems in a day and throw it out and then bring in another system which promises to deliver something which is, let's say, at par with what they were doing. So from a business value perspective, I think they will still keep using their old systems. The problem with blockchain is like a first fax machine. You need to have other adopters as well for it to work. So you need somebody else on the other side to, when you send a fax, you have somebody on the other side to receive a fax. So similar way, you have to move in groups. And if you want larger adoption, and if you want conventional companies to move in groups, we will have to give them bridges. We will have to give them, here is, you bring yourself here, and here onward we'll take care of decentralization and the other, really economically strong, superpowers that blockchain brings in. The third angle is compliance. It's a given fact. It's out in the open that the largest industries which were targeted by the first use cases of blockchain, they're all highly regulated industries. Look at BFSI, look at supply chains. Supply chains, for example, you don't even know how many companies are participating in supply chain. There is there's one company which wants to manufacture a phone, a shoe, a television set, a monitor. It can be anything, but they may be dealing with at least, let's say, 20 companies in that supply chain. Now, how do they exchange their compliance data becomes a challenge. How do we solve it? So all of these on day one, and then they have their own economic disparities. They are at different levels of investment capacity, etc., and tech adoption journey, etc. So we always have to look at that. What's the unifying factor? And that's where I see the Web 2.5 companies are making most sense these days. Where they give everybody a bridge. And if we were to go back a bit and talk about the Web 2.0 era, where we wanted systems to transact, but there was no real way of them to start transacting. So somebody was using batch interfaces, FTP sites to send across data. Then came the EDI revolution. A lot of companies made tons of money on EDI exchange, and then came the API economy. So before that, everybody was like, how do I do this? How do I send my data across? Oh, it's a wonderful thing. It sounds like magic. And then came APIs, and then boom, your data was in the next system in the next minute. So in the next second, actually. So that's why I see similar ways. The way we want from EDI to APIs will now we will now start transacting with Web3 systems using these bridges. Yeah, that's it. That's all from my side, Ravi. Back to you.
I'm sorry. I'm the bad person here. I'm the moderator and I'm a timekeeper as well. It's such an important lesson that I'm learning myself. I do hate to cut it short at times, and I wish it continued. But then you have a lot of interesting topics that I want to get around the table and make sure that everybody has a point of view. So I'll jump into the next pointer and I'll go directly to Vikalp. Vikalp, considering India's macroeconomic factors, adoption on crypto, talent as well, India appears to be one of the promising consumer markets, and it's one of the highest, consumer markets, as we call it, from a product point of view, and which is able to deliver as well. Now, my question to you is, and from your experience at Zinnov and otherwise as well, what makes India a promising Web3 consumer market? And if you deep dive into it, what are the kind of key macroeconomic factors which are Indian specific origination you think will make a difference?
Sure.
Let's quickly go through it.
Sure. So yeah, it's a combination of economic as well as demographic factors. So if you look at so first and foremost, if you look at the 5-year average GDP growth estimates, right? It's close to 6.7, somewhere between 6 to 7%. And if you benchmark or compare with other growing economies, or in general, even if you talk about today's downturn, we'll not go into there, but if you compare it with this average with other averages of other countries or other geographies, we are doing pretty well in that sense, right? For example, if you go compare it with Singapore or South Korea in Asia, they're somewhere between 2 to 2.5%, right? If you go towards Europe, you talk about UK or the European region, they are 2.3 and 2.1% respectively, right? And then same if we compare with LATAM, they're about 2%. So in that particular sense, we're doing better, right? Uh, Now, if, of course, that's not cannot be the only factor. You have to move towards a little bit into demographic factors. For example, the India's penetration, internet penetration rate is growing consistently, right? Today we are all-time high, about 43%. Uh, it is growing at a CAGR of about 45%, which is consistent, but also a pretty decent number, right? Uh, Again, the third point is that one of my favorite that we cannot ignore millennials and Gen Zs. So this is where, for example, if you go by the 2030 estimates, the percentage population of India, as far as Gen Zs or millennials are concerned, will be somewhere between 77%, right? Which will be only second to countries like South Africa or UAE. So it's generally we say that millennials are hungry. They want to spend more. They want to earn more. And they want to invest more, right? And save more, as I said. So we cannot ignore them, and we won't be surprised if these numbers go beyond our estimates, right? So in that particular sense, millennials and Gen Zs are very important. Lastly, about crypto adoption in India, right? A recent report by Chain Analysis, it says that we are number one globally in terms of adopting decentralized finance, and in terms of in terms of the volume we received on chain, right? The second is that we are number two in crypto currency adoption, which is also very a good number. That brings to the point that we have about 100 million plus crypto users in the country. So these all these numbers are a very positive sign in terms of how Web3 is shaping and how we look at it in the near future. So those were some of the interesting points to talk about.
Excellent, Vikalp. I mean, in fact, I was talking to this 19-year-old from a college, and he started a metaverse company where he's actually working with 7 enterprise customers in terms of building their assets on Meta. Now, a 19-year-old, and I'm a Gen X, so from me to understand that, I have to take 2 gulps of water and drink it out to understand that he's working on those enterprise customer and being 19-year-old. So I mean, 10 years from now, I think we've just gone in terms of thinking how speedy the underwater current is, and actually, if we don't
Absolutely.
understand it faster, I think way back across, and now it is going at a speed. Now I'll come
And
to you, Samrat. Yeah, go ahead.
no,
Vikalp.
that brings me to another interesting point, right? About 40% of these crypto users are fall in the age of 80 to 40 only, right? So that's a very unique age set we're talking about.
Yeah, correct. And they understand technology from a usability perspective more better than somebody who's more experienced as an enterprise consultant also, if I'm not wrong. But then that's how it
Absolutely.
is.
Right.
Samrat, I'll come to you directly, and this is one of my favorite topics, uh, and I would like you to highlight on it probably, in our
Yeah.
perspective, how startups are different in India as compared to startups in outside. For example, deep tech was more often a European and then probably US thingy back then. Now it is more universal in nature. You can't just pinpoint the hubs as such, the hub centers or nerve centers. Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi is more active than any other centers across in the world as well, if we talk about it. Now, in your opinion, and probably then I'll come to Ravi quickly. In your opinion, what are the differences between Indian startups and startups across beyond India? And then probably I would want Ravi to touch base on how Indian startups are making a difference in terms of their product offerings. So first to you, Samrat, and then quickly on to Ravi.
Totally. So I'm going to be talking about, from my personal experience, as well as, I'm also an advisor to Startup India program. So I keep seeing startup that wave of Web3 startups now coming in from that angle as well. So I would say, a major difference which I see is, you know, I don't know if I should be starting with a negative point, but this is like something which I personally feel is lacking and which could be worked a little upon, which is research-based startups. So I don't see a lot of companies doing original and research-based work. I see them, picking up things which they see succeeding and which they think that they can do it in a cheaper way. I'm not saying it's a bad model, but I'm just saying that's one side which I would definitely want to see original work being done, research work being done and then being implemented. To an extent, we did very well in the AI space, right? But not so much in the blockchain space. That's my opinion. The other thing which I see is, there's a lot of startups which they export. Um, Actually, most of the startups have been exporting their Web3 work outside of India, and at times I also see these companies, while they may have Indian founders, these companies are operating out of other parts of the world, which are more laid out, rules about crypto, or incomes in crypto. So there are even software companies which are taking their fee in cryptocurrencies. Even they don't feel that India's laws are very straightforward for them, so they start operating from the outside, or at least billing from the outside, but still operating from somewhere in Ghaziabad or Punjab or South. So that's my view. It's I think the overall startup ecosystem in India is ripe for big time scale in the limelight in the global stage, both in terms of skills as well as the kind of work that they've delivered. I think it's just that if they get the right kind of support in terms of research grants, in terms of um, that kind of maybe education, because there are times when people are figuring things out. There's a uh, downside of open source software, which is you're on your own, so you're figuring things out. There's nobody who will hold your hand and say, you know what, I got this. I'll take you there. So yeah, I think those minor tweaks here and there, and then the right kind of education. I think they will be India will be the Web3 leader for the world. That's what my opinion is.
Thanks, Samrat. And over to you, Ravi, quickly.
Yeah,
How do you
so
think Indian startups are making a difference in terms of some global solutions?
yeah, so one just to add some flavor to what Samrat mentioned. So one I see is that there is a very solid difference. I have been into IT consulting mostly as an entrepreneur for the last 22 years. Started with a .com in '98, and thereafter have worked with startup. I got into startup consulting, tech consulting for almost 15, 17 years. One of the major differences that we see today is that we are now having innovative startups for a new technology. Otherwise, till India was still known for mostly services. So we were building for other organizations, whether it be innovating, whether it be just providing services or implementing or maintaining. But now we have startups in the Web3 space from India who are competing at the global level. Polygon on the layer one being a solid example. And now we have other protocols like Shardium is coming in. Again, Shardium has already got a huge traction in the last 3 months. And they're still at the testnet stage. Apart from that, on the infrastructure tooling side, I'm co-founder of Zeeve, but I'll still mention it. We are one of the leading Web3 infrastructure companies in the world, competing with the likes of QuickNode, Alchemy, or Blockchain. And then similarly, if you see on the infrastructure side, we have Biconomy, which is leader in gasless transactions, whether it be Arcana network, which is leader in social logins. So there are, and then there are quite a few young startups I had a chance to meet in the analytics space, like Top Ledger, etc. So one major change which I'm seeing is that there's a lot of innovation that is happening now. So we are not just focusing on providing services and being a leader in building Web3 applications, but we want to be leader in building sustainable, innovative products where we can compete in the global market. So that is one change I'm drastically seeing, and there's a lot of interest. So when we meet a lot of, because all our customers or users are developers of Web3 startups, and I see there's a huge difference. They want to build for themselves. They are looking for an idea. Sometimes it may be a Me Too idea, doing in a different way or a cost-effective manner, as Samrat mentioned. but still that jazba is there, to build something of our own, to be an entrepreneur. So that is one major change I see as compared to IT as a whole in the last 20 years. So I've taken few examples as far as areas are concerned. In terms of use cases, yes, on the layer 1, layer 2 protocols, we have seen Polygon as a layer 2, Shardiem as a layer 1 protocol. And then, we are seeing a lot of startups in the DeFi space, in the NFT and metaverse. NFT and metaverse, I think, has got the attention of India a lot, because one area which we see, of course, there needs to be government participation on the regulatory compliance side also is required. One area which I think is going to define the next 3 to 5 years is tokenization of real world assets. India is sitting on trillions and dollars worth of real world assets, and the asset management is in a bad shape. It's highly inefficient. It's very expensive. We still have mortgages which take 8 weeks. Can you imagine taking a loan against property and it still takes 4 to 8 weeks? So there's a huge disruption which we are sitting on. And I think tokenization of real world assets and adding to that institutional DeFi connected with tokenized assets and redefining the whole lending piece. That's definitely going to be one. Second is metaverse. I'm seeing a lot of exciting startups from India building pretty good metaverse. I had a chance to visit NTL, which is one of the Web3 consulting companies. It's like a behemoth, 700 people, 700 engineers, and they had a very sophisticated metaverse section where they are building quite a few pieces for metaverse companies. And a lot of customers are from India. A lot of startups in India are building in the metaverse. So yeah, use cases, these are mostly, I'm talking about all public protocol use cases where, DeFi, NFTs, and then, the various avatars of tokens like, non-transferable tokens or soul-based tokens, they are picking up now. And on the permission side, we have quite a few enterprise customers. So we are seeing, digital identity, a self-sovereign identity and identity for IoT devices. That is one, especially in the telecom and various other spaces. Then in the financial area, invoice discounting. We have already worked with quite a few players from Middle East, India, Nigeria, building invoice discounting. And invoice discounting has become a very interesting use case, both from a perspective of building a marketplace to bring in efficiency into the invoice, but also, bringing in the flavor of tokenized invoices and open up the whole secondary market for it. So that is also being realized now. Centrifuge is one startup from outside India, but who are, using invoice NFTs or in the DeFi space and take securitization or secondary market for that. So yeah, so quite a few interesting use cases are coming from India, and the best part is we are ruling in some of the use cases.
Great. I think we tend to forget one thing that it's common to all of us to understand is that India is not a 20 million economy or a 30 million economy. It's a multi-trillion dollar economy. That's one.
Yep.
Secondly, we're the largest populated country in the world. Let's understand this. So that may take thrice of Europe or 5 times of the entire subcontinents of merged together. So the adoption for government to do it. I mean, I want to be politically correct here. For adoption to go global on public in an environment like India, which is a huge democracy in itself, right? The decentralization of something like mortgages, you said. Mortgages is I mean, since I've worked in mortgages, I understand it, and I've been in fintech, so I understand it better. Is that the whole economics might take a huge lot of time. You see, the 13-year lien that you check when you do a mortgage loan, if that has to be put on blockchain, it's a huge work. And since UPI etc. has taken time to culminate it now, it might take another 5-7 years as compared to a 1 million 1 million populated country that might do it in say 2 years. For us to do it, it might take us time, but I think we'll be able to do it in some time because the government is pro digital. I think that's one thing that we are very clear fundamentally all about, and I think we'll be able to land there. So coming back to quickly to it, and with the mesmerizing report that we have, I go to Vikalp quickly, and Vikalp, if you can highlight it across in terms of saying as an investor pool, top global and domestic investors, angels inclusive, are investing into Web3 space and deep tech initially, now Web3 space. What are the kind of trends and promising investment trends that you've seen, which you want to highlight across as a research, lead in terms of India perspective or globally, if you can just put a call into
Sure.
it.
Sure. So we like to call out India numbers only right now because
Yeah.
as part of the study, right? So
Right.
when we looked at these numbers closely, we found that in the last 3 years, especially starting 2019 to the Q1 of 2022, we see that there's a steady flow of seed stage investments. And for any ecosystem to where you see a such steady state of stage investment, it's a healthy sign in terms of uh, establishment, but also growth, right? So the seed stage investment accounted for about 71 to 95% of the total investments in a given year. And it was only 2021 or 2022 that we found there were large ticket investments. We're talking about some of the bigger companies such as investments in CoinDCX or CoinSwitch, right? So this was one interesting insight in terms of understanding the investments. Second was that the uh, uh, the investors who have invested in India, and they are not just India-based funds, but they are also funds which have HQs in either USA or it's Southeast Asia or even UAE for that matter, right? So there's a mixed breed of investors who are coming in to invest in Indian startups. So that those are one or two insights that came up in terms of understanding how investments have played. Talking about the quantum, we have seen a tremendous increase in terms of as we compare this with 2020 numbers and Q1 22 numbers, right? There has been increase of 30 investments of to the tune of 37 times in 2022. So that way, those numbers come in terms if we talk about India's landscape.
Great, thanks, Vikalp. And if I have to understand, these numbers are multiplied. They've not just added; they're multiplied and exponentially grown in the last 2 years, if not
Correct.
if not five. And I think this is one of the largest multiplication of investments that have happened across in deep tech
Correct.
space or emerging tech, as we call. Thanks, Vikalp, on this. So quickly, I'll go to Samrat and Ravi in 1 minute each. If you can summarize your understanding of how the investor sentiments have been towards the Indian ecosystem on Web3. So I'll go to Samrat quickly to you and quickly then off to you, Ravi.
Sure, Ravi. So I've practically seen I was fortunate that I was raising funds while people were still learning about Web3 and what really it is doing, both in terms of dollars as well as in crypto. So I think from a fundraising perspective, the good part with Web3 companies, they can also raise funds in cryptocurrencies. If they really believe in a particular project and the project believes in them, they could swap tokens, they could raise funds from a certain token. So I think that's a big plus. And as the numbers are speaking, the floodgates have opened, and the startups are able to find support, from even conventional venture funds. Um, very interestingly, I also see, I think it's not happening in India yet, but there are some pension funds also investing in Web3 startups. So which is a big plus for the overall ecosystem, I would say.
And generally, pension funds do not put their money into.
Absolutely, they are super conventional. Yes.
Very surprised. Very surprised. Over to you, Ravi.
Yeah, so I think the way I have been seeing, especially in last 1.5 years, and I think Vikalp already has mentioned as part of the report, that there's a lot of positive investor sentiment as far as investment in Web3 startups in India is concerned. And the reason is clear because some of the startups have already shown tremendous growth and competence at the global level. And that is giving, and overall, the Web3 market is also increasing a lot. And a lot of investors are seeing that as a positive sign that this is the right time to get into it. And as Samrat mentioned, yes, there's a change, not from just from a startup perspective, but from the investor perspective. Traditional investors are now even open to invest into token-based models and token-based startups. So that again is a huge change. Otherwise, typically, it was typically unheard of in 1920. It is something which has recently started with Sequoia investing into Polygon, and a lot of other traditional startups have started investing into token-based ventures also. So yeah, so the investment sentiment has become very good, and as more startups become successful and investor returns get better, I think we'll see even more traction coming into in 23.
Great. Thanks, Ravi. And I could quickly jump on to the last and most important part of it is the talent pool across. And I think India remains as the hot talent pool for technology. Not it's I don't think so. A report is required to even talk about it. But I think validation from reports is a good thing always. However, I see I've seen that reports always highlight across when it comes to technology that India leads them by far worldwide, right? So I'll go to Vikalp quickly and understanding his, lead understanding of the talent pool that is governing across the Web3 space. And the question here is, what are the kind of key trends in the Web3 talent landscape that you've come across in this report? And is it something that was thought of initially, or is what is coming as a surprise to you, considering that we are the fastest growing with 120% and more in terms of Web3 space?
Sure. So yeah, if you look at we are the third largest talent pool for sure, but we look at it from a digital tech talent perspective, right? So if in India, if digital tech talent is about 30% of the total tech talent, then we're talking about professionals who are skilled in blockchain, AI, ML, or emerging technologies, right? Now, this is where that scale comes in, right? This is where, um, so if I say there are about 75,000 blockchain professionals currently in India, then this is where that opportunity comes in, right? And that's where when we were working on this report, we spoke to various startups who are working in this space to understand this problem better. Not just problem, but as to get a sense of what does talent mean to them, right? So we categorize these startups into low growth, medium growth, and high growth startups. Now, when we talk about low growth rate startups, these are those startups that are trying to build teams, right? And they are looking to they're sourcing this externally. They're sourcing the external talent externally to build these teams, right? And when you look at the medium growth rate startups, they are not just sourcing externally, but also trying to upskill or reskill their internal talent, which is currently existing in their company. Third is the high growth rate startups who are uh, who are struggling in terms of finding upskilling sources, right? So there's different these are very small and intricate findings, but if you look them closely, it's all about looking at the opportunity of upskilling and reskilling the talent. And that's where all those initiatives will come into, whether it's a private or a public institute, uh, with some initiatives on reskilling and upskilling, right? I'll come to Rashi also, just if she wants to add on to this in terms of the findings.
Yeah, so I think Vikalp, you have covered major of the pointers how India is doing great in terms of the talent pool. I think just to add from the academia push and the how we would like to see this growing forward would be from how we can inculcate first of all the awareness and the kind of the growth part that this particular technology has to offer. That would be really helpful in not only just having the talent being developed within India, and since we are like growing tech talent pool, and we actually are great adopters of the the technologies. But I think that with that kind of a clarity and a push from the how this is going to grow is also going to play a very, very pivotal role here.
Excellent. So I think that is a very important part, and this aligns with the next question. And I wish that I'll go to Samrat and Ravi for a kind of an MCQ, not subjective. So if I put an MCQ like, what are the top 3 skills required for an individual, and there will be a lot of individuals who are listening to this, and they'll be listening for times to come. What are the three skills that you think? I'll come to you, Samrat, first, and then to you, Ravi. What are three key skills that you think are important for upgrading oneself from Web 2.5 right now to 3, in your opinion? Quickly to you, Samrat, and then to Ravi.
Sure. So I would say, if there are people who are doing server-side programming, I think they should continue doing that. In terms of languages, Go, Solidity is something to, which is the way to go. Why I said these two, because there is tons of open source material out there, which is freely available for anybody to go and learn. So the only investment you're making is your time. The second is try and learn economics. I think that is extremely important to understand because here in a decentralized world, everything is driven by something which people are either doing, keeping, running on, off, etc. So try and learn economics, maybe basics of smart contracts. And the third thing is cybersecurity. I think cybersecurity was something which a lot of people missed out in the early wave of Web3, and we saw a lot of hacks. And smart contract range, etc., which happened, which brought a lot of bad press also along. So I would say let's not do that. So it should become part of the basics to get started with. So that's my three things, Ravi. Back to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, so
Ravi.
I think pretty much the buckets remain the same. I would just add that Rust has started picking up. So
Yeah,
in
true.
addition to Golang and Solidity, Rust is becoming very hot. Especially Parity is pushing it, and some of the new protocols like Aptos, etc., are largely driven where you are writing contracts in Rust. Second, of course, I'm a big fan, and I always suggest that don't just go for programming languages. If you're getting in Web3, go study Bitcoin white papers, study what token engineering is, how to define token economics, because if you leave aside the whole incentive mechanism part of it, most of the blockchain models are not going to work. So that is very, because you cannot simply remove intermediaries and don't replace it with nothing, So you have to have incentive mechanism, because these intermediaries today in traditional world are also playing a role, right? So token engineering or token economics is very important. And as Samrat mentioned, knowing about the best practices, because we are still, benchmarks are being defined, standards are being defined, but knowing all those standards and even participating in some of these standardization will definitely help the individual as well as the overall ecosystem.
Thanks, Ravi. And this brings me to the next question, which is pertaining to this only. As leaders in this space, hiring at any level is important to understand the attitude and the understanding of the product or the technology, because a small little glitch is all interlinked to each other. It's a web in itself, right? Now, as
Right.
leaders, I'll go to you, Samrat, again, and MCQ, and Ravi as you again. As the linear question to the first question that I asked on the MCQ, which important, really freshed on the skill part of it. Now, as leaders, you must be going through a lot of top level to bottom level coders to program assistants to cybersecurity professionals who are working on this. It's like a web in itself, right? And it is imperative that you hire the right kind of talent from bottom up, right, on top down as well, because one mistake and everything is gone, right? Now, again in an MCQ format, what do you think are the current gaps? I mean, let's put two gaps, critical gaps, when you hunt for talent and which is not there and which is missing right now in the talent professional pool. So, Samrat, over to you first, and then Ravi, quickly to you.
Okay. So yeah, I was trying to. So the first thing which I'm seeing is, oh, you want me to talk about gaps, right? So
Yes.
let me talk about. So security is a big gap I see. When I start talking about smart contract security, I'm really having a hard time hiring somebody on smart contract security. That's one. Second is ZKP. So zero knowledge proofs is something which is a technology which is picking up really fast, and I think in conjunction with blockchains, it can bridge a lot of gaps in real world industry cases. In fact, the kind of cases Dr. Ravi was also talking about, like invoice financing, etc. So this ZKP and security is something which I've been looking for. These are gaps I see, and people should learn about them. These are hardcore engineering concepts, so it will take a lot of time and effort to go through it. But I don't doubt the capabilities and diligence of Indian engineers. So I hope to see this gap being filled very, very soon. Can I also talk about two challenges, because this is something which I come across a lot. One is imposters.
Quickly.
I have become so bored of looking through people's profiles and finding the same words everywhere, and then they're not able to talk even a single sentence of sense. So I think people need to stop that. Otherwise, people, we'll just lose trust on, on anybody who comes in. So yeah, imposters, big challenge when you're doing Web3 hiring. The second, the second challenge which I've sort of started to feel is, at a very senior level, for example, as you were saying that people are here at all levels. I think a lot of people need to be doing the storytelling on the business side. So I see that gap is also there. People talking about business and strategy, which can then align to Web3 models. There are a lot of chartered accountants, for example, which I see, or MBAs who've done their statistics and who've done their management courses, and they're doing a great job. But that is also one of the key areas which I see is a challenge right now to hire the right people. Cool. Okay,
Ravi,
back.
Ravi, fast
Yeah, so
and
I would
curious.
so I would say one, basics of blockchain, which I mentioned earlier also, knowing about token economics, knowing about the whole concept behind blockchain, how to architect a solution. And we know that many large enterprise projects have failed just because they were not designed correctly, right? There were
Yeah.
no proper incentives aligned, etc. So that is basics of blockchain is definitely one. And then as Samrat mentioned, charlatans and so-called gurus definitely is a challenge. So the way we see it is, that it's very difficult to find ready-made blockchain developers today. You, as a Web3 startup, I would always say, because that you need to train. To create a training module as soon as you hire someone who has done a course, because there are still not very standardized, well-defined courses in the market. So that's why even if they have gone through a proper course, still they will lack something or the other. So design a good training module to cover up some of those gaps on the understanding of basic side is concerned.
I think I would
We
like
are
to
doing
add.
that.
I like to add something which is interesting. So when I was part of this cryptocurrency company, which was actually making a exchange for cryptocurrency, right? Uh, and I was not from a tech background, but I knew how to execute tech, right? So the only thing I understood in the whole thing was that you can hire people with the right attitude. You can't change the
Yeah.
personality of a person, right? So somebody
Yeah.
who's willing to learn and unlearn a product or a service ethically or conceptually, and this is important because blockchain as a concept is important to understand first before you even start coding in. It's not like a Python or something like that. You need to understand what is the repercussion if you program it and what is going to be the result, right? So if the right kind of attitude is there and the person has a understanding of how to unlearn and relearn, I think hiring becomes easy. But problem is that people, as you said, the imposter syndrome goes so deep inside that I know everything and nobody knows nothing, right? So that kills the entire entity, and you have to go through 100 resumes to find one. So I think it is a very important thing, and I think thank gentlemen for highlighting it out. And I think it's a very important thing to understand and build it out from a conceptual point of view. Vikalp, Rashi, you have any pointers or understanding that you would want to highlight in terms of the gaps that you see in the Indian ecosystem versus outside or in the talent pool as well? So maybe quick 2-3 points from you and Rashi and Vikalp before we wind it off.
Yeah, I think coming from this, while we are, having this demand of increasing demand of blockchain and the skills that are related to Web3, it's very important for having a very right, like a Web 2.5 model, where there could be this kind of a transition phase, even in terms of the learning as well. And since we have a great talent pool for Web 2.0, it will be, I think, very good to have that pool also transition towards Web 3 Web 3. So if they can actually catch up that kind of a learning, so that will be a top up to the already that rich talent pool that we have, and we can actually address that kind of a demand gap as well. So I think if we can work again, that is from the academia aspect again, how we can, make that path clear and have that kind of a 2.5 path maybe.
Vikalp, off to you from a research and from a whole helicopter view from that perspective.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's very related to what Rashi just mentioned, right? So we need to anchor this around the current supply of graduates we look at. So therefore, for example, the STEM, we have a supply of about 2.14 million STEM graduates every year coming out of colleges, right? And so we need to anchor all the upskilling, reskilling initiatives around this, because ultimately these graduates are going to get absorbed in the industry. So yeah, that's my point in terms of looking at how we can address this.
Samrat, do you have a point?
Yeah, super quick. So on the academia gap, and this is something which we took up as a challenge at Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and we said, we go around and we standardize Ethereum education, and to by extension blockchain education. So Ethereum Enterprise Ethereum Alliance is currently working on a standard for blockchain education. So if you're anybody which is creating a course, you will always have a standard to refer to. So just like, because we don't have boards, right? So it's like universities have curriculum, boards have their own ways. It's something like that, which is open source. Anybody could just pick it up, adopt it. So any college, any university, any online program, offline program, just pick it up, have a full view of, if you were to create a level 1, level 2, level 3 engineer, manager, these will be the skill set. So it's work in progress. You will definitely see it very, very soon.
Well, love to see it across. I think with this, we took a great session out, and thank you everybody for sharing your views, etc. I think we'll conclude our session right now, and the report is available with the link. And I love to have the comments for people at large, and I would love to see the kind of comments which are truly nature in terms of your understanding versus our understanding in terms of the Web3 space. Please feel free to share it across with the like-minded folks, and the more you share, the more comments we get in terms of understanding and reworking on terms of how you think about it, because it's by you for you, kind of stuff. And I thank Vikalp and Rashi for mitigating this entire thing out into a report. I thank Samrat and Ravi for taking out time and sharing their amazing views. Sorry, I wanted to take it longer in terms of time, but time doesn't permit me at times, so I have to be a moderator here. Thank you very much, and I'll take a leave now, but see you soon again.